What if you could take that risk, make that change, reach that goal, live your best life? Welcome to another episode of the What If You Could podcast, where we get together with amazing experts and everyday people who share challenges, encourage healing, and explore the possibilities that life has to offer. I'm your host, Gary Scott, and I'm excited that you're along for the ride. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of What If You Could podcast. And today I have a wonderful guest with me. We share a togetherness as fellow realtors, but we're not going to talk real estate at all. So we're not going to bore you, so don't go away. But I have Susan Snow, who is an author. She does coaching. She works with trauma and PTSD and things like that, which she'll cover with you. So, hello, Susan Snow.
Hi. Thanks
Oh,
for having me.
yay! Let's have some fun on a not so fun topic. I mean, um, life is lifey, so you kind of got to mix the good with the bad. But we're gonna show people that you can help them and get over the hump, huh? So we'll do that
Sounds
today.
good. Yep, absolutely.
Awesome. So I'm going to fire off Susan's bio. She gave me the perfect bio. It's like three sentences. I love it. So let me just read it real quick. Introduction to Susan Snow. Susan Snow is the daughter of slain LAPD detective Thomas C. Williams, who was ambushed and killed on October 31st, 1985, when she was only 17 years old. Susan Snow is a published author, speaker, and coach. Susan currently works as a realtor in the Denver metro area. And that's the last time I'll mention real estate. So, because I've been doing it 35
Perfect.
years, I know you're in it. So,
Oh,
Susan,
yeah,
welcome,
I've been in
welcome.
it for a while.
I can't wait to get into your book. I can't wait to get in your coaching. I want to hear your story. I want to hear about your father. But because we are the What If You Could podcast, really one of the few questions, I have for folks is, you know, do you have a what if you could moment? Was there a time in your life where you're like, had the what if you could?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I've had a few of those.
We call
Uh,
that a plethora. We've had a
yeah,
plethora of the.
yeah. So, not going back into real estate, but the company that I work for has big conventions, and they have speakers that come and they speak. So keynote speakers. And probably 10 years ago, I was at an event and I looked up on the stage and I had that moment like, what if I could be that? What if I could affect 10,000, 15,000, 20,000 people the way that this person is doing it? And I'm on my way.
Yes. All right, we're gonna turn a what if you could, and I totally freaking nailed that thing. Just, I want you to finish, but just because I'm curious, who's your company and who is the speaker?
So, oh my gosh, we've had so many speakers, but back then I can't think of the 10 years ago.
That's okay. Only
However,
because I've been to a million of
like
them. And
we've
people
had Tony Robbins, Mel Robbins, we've had oh my gosh, like you name it, we've had it.
Tom Ferry, Mike Ferry.
Yeah, oh maybe yeah. I
Yeah.
think Mike Ferry was years ago.
Yep.
Um anyways, I'm with Keller Williams. If
Oh,
yeah. So, and actually, they being a part of that organization really kind of went hand in hand with the coaching part. I got into the business and then I started coaching agents, and I realized that down the road, I've been doing it for almost 15 years now, and I realized that people have been dealing with trauma, um, they respond and they respond differently in certain situations where they're coming from their trauma. And they create a situation where there's ego involved in the transaction, and that is a trauma response. So that's what kind of kicked off the idea of, you know, I'm in the right place, um, and I can help others. And I'm not saying just realtors, like I can help anyone who has been in that situation and maybe they feel stuck. So that's where the coaching came into play.
Mhm. And you said you had a plethora of them. Was one of them when your father was slain? Was there maybe you looked at that and said something has got to come good out of this because this is a freaking nightmare. I mean,
Yeah,
that's a
it that
tragic
came
thing.
many, many years ago. I honestly didn't write my book till I was 50. Um, and it took me 4.5 years to write it and publish it. So it was a long journey just in that. Um, I didn't know the first thing about writing a book. So that was a journey in itself. Um, I always kind of knew, I told everyone, like I would tell everyone, I'm going to write a book one day. I'm going to write a book one day. And people can still remember those conversations with me where I said, I'm going to write a book one day. And then I did it. So when I say I'm going to do something now, like people believe me.
She's not kidding around, man. Girlfriend come
I'm
through.
I'm not, yeah, I'm not kidding around. So, and especially something as important as this, I will say that a lot of the situation that I'm in now and I really wanted my legacy. I wanted the legacy to change. My legacy was obviously my dad's death and the way he died, and I'll go into that. Um, but I wanted to extract the lessons out of the healing from that trauma and turn it into something positive for my kids and my grandchildren down the road. So that was one of the purposes of writing a book is I wanted to leave a legacy that was different than the legacy I had.
Yeah. First of all, you look like you're in your 30s. So
Well,
whatever
thank
you're
you.
going
You're
through
my
this,
new best friend.
working. Seriously, when you said you started the book at 50 and you took 4 years, I'm not real smart because I'm a real estate broker, but I mean, that added up to more than I thought you were like 35. So congratulations
Thank
there.
you.
But
I'm quite proud. I'm 56. I just turned
wow,
56.
you look amazing. So whatever you're doing,
Thank
keep
you.
doing it. But we all, everyone deals with different forms of trauma.
Absolutely.
We majority of us had really, really crappy upbringings and childhoods, whatever. We were latchkey kids or whatever it was. We had challenging parents. I lost my best friend and my wife and the mother of my kids to cancer when she was only 46, 10 years ago, and it's still a shit show. So,
Yeah.
when you did it take you that long to write the book because you were dealing with what was going to go in the book, or just life got in the way and you never got around to it?
I needed to be mentally in a place where I was strong enough to write the book. Um, and it has been years. And I'll tell you my story so that you understand where this journey came from. When I was 17, like you had said, my dad was a Los Angeles police detective. And in that alone, my dad it was my best friend. I was very blessed to have a father that was very present and made you feel like you were the most important
Mm.
person in the room. Whether you were a colleague, whether you trained with him, whether you were his son or his daughter, it didn't matter. That's just who he was, um, innately. And so, with him being a police officer, when he was on the street, I was young. I was young. And there was always a fear that daddy could get hurt, out there. But as I got older and he became a detective, I got like a false sense of security on that because I thought, okay, well, dad's got a desk job now. He comes in after the fact, so he's really not in danger. And all that changed on Halloween of 1985. Um, that morning, he was actually going to testify in a case that he was the lead detective on. And I wanted to go to a party that night. I was like your typical teenage, like, I want to go to a party, Dad, with my boyfriend and my friends. And my dad shut it down. He was, it was a school night and he was a stickler. Like, nope, not doing it. And I got a little butt hurt over it. And, but at the same time, I was just like, um, I knew that at some point I could schmooze him and my mom into letting me go. So he dropped me off at school. The plan was he was going to leave court, go pick up my 6-year-old brother from school, and then my mom would come home from work and we would, figure out from there what the night was going to look like. I got home, cleaned the entire house, like the entire house from top to bottom. I was going to do whatever it took. And my mom walked through the door and she was in her costume from a work thing and she went to go take the costume off. I was laying out my costume at the time and the phone rang. So it was a time, you remember this, when the phone was attached to the wall.
Oh yeah.
So I ran to the phone thinking, who's going to call my parents, right? It's got to be a friend about the party. And I picked up the phone and it wasn't for me. It was a lady from my brother's school. And all she said to me was that there was a drive-by shooting and my dad was involved. And I immediately just my heart sank. I didn't know what to say, and my mom had rounded the corner, so I handed her the phone. She picked up the phone, and I just watched her demeanor change. I watched her body language change, and I just knew that it was bad. So, um, she got off the phone and looked at me and said, "We're going to the school." So I said, "Okay." And we got in the car and we didn't say 2 words to each other. It was a 7-minute drive. And I just sat in my chair, just like scared, not knowing if he was okay, not knowing what this was going to look like. Like I just, my young brain was just going a mile a minute. And we got to the school, and the way that the school is set up is you've got the front of the school, the middle of the school, there's a parking lot. And the back side of the school is generally where the kids would be let out after school care. And this was evening, early evening. So we parked in the parking lot in the middle and we headed towards the back of the school. And as we were walking, we could see the night sky like lit up with all of the police cars, lights. There was an ambulance that was sitting in the road and just sitting there. And there were 2 officers that were walking towards us and they had tears in their eyes. And we just kind of ignored that. and kept walking until we saw my dad's truck from the corner of our eyes. So we started to run towards the truck. And as we got closer, we saw that there was glass on the ground
Mhm.
and rounded the corner, and there he was, partially covered up, but they had covered him where he fell. I didn't know where my brother was. I didn't know if he was hurt. I didn't know anything. I watched my mom drop to her knees and scream. And as a kid, I didn't know how to process what I was seeing. So I hyper focused on that ambulance that was sitting in the road, thinking, why aren't they helping him? And soon enough, two officers came up and escorted us out of there and took us to a an office within the inside of the school. And I sat down. My mom was taken aside by some detectives to talk to her. At this point, I'm still trying to process everything that I am experiencing and still have no idea where my brother is. Um, as I was sitting there trying to process everything, there were two women that were uh, employees. They worked at the school and they were talking, and the one of them said that my dad was deceased. And that's when my world cracked. I I had this feeling in me that I just wanted to run and just run away from this scene and run away as far as I could go away from this nightmare. But my body would not allow that to happen. I literally felt like my legs were made with cement. So as I sat there, just trying to grasp what was happening, my mom came around the corner and said, I'm sending you with a neighbor. And I know that part of me wanted to leave. I wanted to go. I wanted to run. But the kid part of me wanted to be with my family unit. Um, I needed an adult to like tell me it was going to be okay or give me some sense of security because my dad was my security and now he's gone. And I don't know how to navigate all of this. And now I'm being sent to a neighbor's house away from the rest of my family. And I just really struggled with it. My poor neighbor, when I arrived, she knew my parents forever. And her daughter and I were good friends. And she was trying to process everything. The neighborhood was total chaos. There was police officers everywhere, helicopters, the media, because it was a big deal. The media, ascended. Um, and so she, as an adult, was trying to deal with that, but also here she has his daughter who is completely beside herself. Like all I wanted at that point was my boyfriend. And we had only been dating 3 months. He was 19. And when she called him at work, she didn't give him any information. She just said that I needed him, that, something happened to my dad. And so when he showed up, he was like, get your purse, get your jacket. What hospital is he at? Let's go. Where's your mom? Where's your brother? And the words could not fly out of my mouth. Like I just could not say what I needed to say because I knew in that moment it was real. And the more he kept trying to get me to leave, the more I was like, I just blurted it out. And I said, he's gone. He's not at a hospital. And he looked at me and he said, what do you mean? And I said, he's gone. And I watched him drop to his knees and sob. So the both of us being kids, not knowing how to navigate any of this. I mean, I will say that as a 19-year-old boy, the fact that he even stuck around was pretty crazy because most guys would have been like, no way, this is too much. I'm out. But he didn't. And I'm grateful for that. And the rest of the night, like I finally went home um, on my own and he went with me. And I mean, my house was filled with people that I'd never known before. And I know some of them were dignitaries and, from LAPD, but I did not want to talk to anybody. I didn't want to see anybody. I made a beeline for my room and I hid in there. And when he left, I just stayed in there, even though my house was still filled with people. I could hear my brother crying, so I knew that he was home. But I had nothing to get. I had nothing. I couldn't even get out of my bed. Um, I was just at a loss and shocked, scared because I'm seeing all this police presence and I'm not understanding that. Um, I didn't know if that was a normal thing that happens or not. And it wasn't until the next day that I was able to see my brother like late morning and I was able to hug him and um, make sure he was okay physically and that. But I think back then too, this was mid 80s. There was no talk of mental health back then. And there were no resources for kids. LAPD had systems in place to support the spouses, but not much for the children. So, and my brother being 6 years old, he was at a whole different mentality than I was at 17.
Did the LAPD, you sometimes you see like counselors on the scene or therapists that show up. Were they not doing that back then? That just
No,
wasn't a thing back then.
wasn't a thing. Um, the chaplain showed up, but other than that, no, there wasn't anything. And it wasn't until a month after the, the funeral. Now, it was the man that he had testified against that day was the one that laid in wait because he was out on bail
Mm.
during his trial. And this was a planned out assassination for months. So the reason why we had so much police detail was because we were targets too. And that didn't come out until the trial many years later. But that's why. And we had that detail for 6 days because it took them that long to catch the men that were involved.
May I
So,
ask what he was on trial for?
attempted murder and robbery, which is what my dad was a robbery homicide detective, so he got that case.
Uh, How was how was your mom's, reaction to that's a pretty big age gap, right? 17 to 6.
Mhm.
So she's got kind of a tightrope to walk there as far as how she can try to, you know, deal with you and your emotions and how she could deal with a 6-year-old boy's emotion. I mean, how's your mom walking that tightrope?
She didn't deal with me.
Well, that's good news. So that was helpful too.
She she didn't And that was one of the things I do talk about this in my book. I was kind of pushed to the side. Um, it even took the media a couple of days to figure out he had a teenage daughter. So immediately my mindset was I wasn't important. And that followed me for many years. My mom, many years later, I'm realizing that the reasoning behind all of the choices that she made in that time was because she does have a narcissistic personality. And so she kind of turtled into herself. She was not capable of handling all of that.
Yeah.
She could barely handle it herself. And so she tried to make other people fix me. Um, and don't get me wrong, like that night was so chaotic. I don't blame her for anything because she was running on whatever, right? Um, but there were consequences to the choices that she made in me.
Did your mom jump into the classic rebound that a lot of us do who lose a spouse for immediately she's with someone else and you're like, what the hell, mom? You know, dad's not even gone very long. Or did she stay? At least she didn't do that mistake.
She stayed single. She's never dated. She never, here's the thing, and this is why she and I are no contact. When the book came out, she had decided that because I was authentic and had to tell my truth, in that I had to tell her truth, and she didn't like that. So,
Of course. I get
yeah.
it. My father passed away 31 years ago,
Hmm.
and my mom was younger than I am now. I'm
Hmm.
61, so she was like 50 something when my dad died. You know, working, attractive woman, and she never dated either. Never remarried, never had a single date in the last 31 years.
Yeah.
It's bizarre to me that people go to that place, but you know, it's
Well, you
how
got to
damaged. I mean, were you guys
understand.
like right out the gate? You guys had that the relationship was damaged, or
Oh no, it
did it
was
take a
before
while?
that. Oh
Yeah.
no, it was we've never had a healthy relationship. Okay. And I did not realize that. I mean, when you are in an abusive relationship, narcissistic abusive relationship, it's hard to see unless you heal yourself. It's hard to see that what she was doing was abusive, if you know what I mean.
Was she jealous of you and your dad's relationship?
I think part of it. Um, I think the unfortunate part is the fact that my mom chose, like I say to this, not only did I lose my dad that night, I lost my mom that night because she lost her identity. And she lives in the I'm an LAPD widow land and has never stepped out of that. It is comfortable for her, which honestly used to drive me bananas because, it's
Yeah.
like that's not that's not what he would have wanted for her, but that's what she chose. So, um,
Do you think that's what took you so long? Were you protecting your mom by taking so long to write the book because you knew that you had to bring that truth, do you think? Or is it just you
oh,
getting healed yourself?
I had to heal. I had to be in a place, in a state of mind where I knew if I dove in and relived and felt all the emotions that I felt before, I needed to have the tools to be able to pull myself out of whatever it would bring up for me. And I had it. And I can tell you, a lot of the stuff that I talk about too is the fact that in the beginning, LAPD sent us to therapy. And in hindsight, the therapist that they sent me to, I didn't even, I mean, I was a kid. I thought if you went to a therapist, you were crazy, right? So that was just,
Yeah.
um, so I really didn't understand what therapy was. And I didn't know how to verbalize all of the things that I was dealing with, which was PTSD, but didn't understand that way back then, right? But I had the anxiety, I had the suicidal ideation, I had deep depression, I had all of the things that come up. I just didn't know how to verbalize that. And so when I went to this therapist, I had, I just went because my mother told me to, right? But in hindsight, I don't think this gentleman was trauma competent. He didn't understand what he was getting himself into. And so in that, he kept our sessions very shallow and really didn't dive in, really didn't ask. Like he never asked me how that night affected me. Never. He only dealt with my relationship with my mom, my brother, my boyfriend, and school because I was a senior in high school at this point. And every week that I saw him, I was like, today is the day. He's going to help me feel better, right? Because I was not sleeping. I was not sleeping, which was exacerbating my depression. I was living in a fog. Um, and, every time I came out of it, I was like, oh, it wasn't today, maybe next week. And I saw him for a year. And after a year, he looked at me and said, Susan, you're a well-rounded young lady and you're going to be fine for the rest of your life. And I don't need to see you anymore. So I walked out of there
Thanks, Doc.
thinking, yeah,
I'll
I'm
see.
like,
Glad I
okay, well
wasted a
then
year of my life visiting you.
I'm broken. I'm crazy. I've snapped. A professional can't help me. Like I'm gonna have to live with all of these things for the rest of my life. So what I ended up doing, which is not healthy, mind you, but um, I created my emotional mask. And how I did that was I started to listen to the adults around me who would say things like, oh, Susie, you're so strong. You're so brave. You're so resilient. You're so this, you're so that. And I thought, okay, I'm going to wear that. That's what I'm going to wear. So anytime I am dealing with anything, that's what people are going to see. They're not going to see what is actually happening with me. And that's how I lived my life in fight or flight, 14 years. And I married the boyfriend and I'm still with him 39 years later.
Wow.
Um, and in 97, we decided to move from Southern California. I needed to distance myself because at the time, I didn't want, people knew who I was. Um, And even though it had been many years, it's still like it was fresh for other people, right? And so I needed to distance myself from that, not to mention the men that were in prison. I still had that feeling of um, looking behind my shoulder all the time. And I didn't want that anymore. So we moved to Colorado. And I had two babies that were young. Um, and About 2 years into living here, on April 20th of 1999, I was a hairdresser at the time, and I was working in a salon that was close to Littleton, Colorado. That day, I did my client's hair. I put her under the dryer, and I went to go take a break. Went into the back room, turned on the little TV, and all the coverage from the Columbine shootings
Mm.
was on the TV live. And I spiraled. I had flashbacks. I started sweating. I turned pale. I was having a panic attack. My colleagues were looking at me like, "What is happening to you?" Because they didn't know my story. And I didn't know what was going on because I was told I was going to be fine for the rest of my life. So as I was standing there, I was just like, I don't understand what's going on with me. I don't know why I'm having this reaction. And my colleagues were like, you're not old enough to have children here. And you said you didn't live in this area. So what is happening? I said, I don't know. So what I ended up doing is I put that mask back on and I went back and I did my client's hair for the rest of the day. Now everybody else was upset and angry and crying and emotional, and I was cool as a cucumber. Um,
So people that in your new community, in your new life, they didn't know the history behind your when you were
no,
young? No.
some close friends did, but other than that, no. Um, so I finished my day like nothing happened. Walked through the door, and all of the emotions that I felt at 17 came flooding back. And as I was driving home, all like I started to spiral. I started going to the dark places. I, I was like, I can't do this anymore. I can't. But my brain was having a fight because even though I didn't want to be here, I had two babies. I had two children. And so I had this fight going on top of everything else. And 2 days into it, my husband watched me spiral. He met me at the door and he said, "You have two choices. You either go get help today or I'm putting you in a hospital." Because he knew it was a slippery slope. He knew.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I said, "Okay, I'm putting up the white flag." And I went to a physician first, and he put me on antidepressants because that's what they do. And then he handed me a card and he said, "I want you to make an appointment with this therapist." And I literally laughed in his face. I was like, come on now. I tried that 14 years ago. It didn't work. I didn't feel any better. What makes you think this is going to work? And he said, "You have no choice." So I said, "All right." So I made an appointment, and 3 minutes into this appointment, I realized, holy cow, this is different because she specialized in PTSD, she specialized in severe trauma, and she asked me the hard questions, which I was able to tell her what happened at 17, all the things that I've dealt with, living in fight or flight, and what was happening currently. And she looked at me and she said, "Susan, everything you've gone through since you were 17 is normal because you have PTSD. But what you need to know about that is that PTSD does not go away. You learn to manage it." And in that moment, I was like, "Oh my God, I have hope. I I could feel better one day. I I'm gonna feel better one day." Like I was so shocked at the difference.
Is is the book does the book have the story about your father and what happened that day and then what happened for the next 33 years?
Yes.
Or it so it does. So in the book you have to relive all of this over again.
Yep.
And
Everything.
so you're like 31 when you go to the new therapist who's actually showing light at the end of the tunnel, but
Yep.
it still took another 16 years to be able to write the book.
Yes.
Wow.
It's not
Because
a, it's not a marathon. Yeah.
how much of that time were you involved actively in the therapy?
I stopped going to therapy probably, I've been in and out, I call it maintenance. I've been in and out of therapy pretty much my whole life. Um, but she was the one, and another therapist she sent me to a little bit later for some more intense cognitive therapies that really made the difference. She was the turning point for me and taught me modalities that I use today. Um, and
So when you
modalities that
say
I
you the
teach people.
modalities that you use today,
Yeah,
you are the ones that you use for yourself to help you
yes,
continue to heal, or that you use with other people?
both.
Both.
Both. So I've taught people some of the techniques that I use. Um, but for me, it was a real um turning point, and that's why when I wrote the book, I knew how I wanted the book to be. And the book is in two parts. So the first part of the book is all about the traumas, and there is multiple. So multiple traumas in my life. The second part is how I got through it. And I call it kind of my cliff notes of healing. If you remember cliff notes. If you
Yep.
don't, it's fine.
Yep.
But yeah, so that's what I used is that's how I got my trajectory of this is what I want to do. When I started to write the book though, and you talk about my mom's situation, we had a relationship at that time, you know, not healthy by any means, but we still did. And when I wrote the book, I was fearful. I was like, okay, well, this is either going to break it or it's going to open up a conversation. And I had to be okay with either. Same with my husband. I had the fear that we've been through hell and back, but some of the things that I talk about in my book, if that was going to break it. And then obviously the third one was my security because two of the men were still in prison, putting myself out there, especially globally and, you know, out there. Um, was that going to open me up to retaliation? Um, but I will tell you that over and above any of those fears, I realized in writing the book that my message was more important than my fear. And the my purpose was in showing hope to others and really saying to them that they're not alone and that you can heal from anything. Um,
How much healing has come from the book? I mean, besides the fact that you're starting to help, or you've been helping and healing others, but personally for you, I mean, how much healing did any come from writing the book? Did you see some sort of relief at all?
you want to hear an example?
Yeah.
Last July, a year ago July, so July of 2023, the book came out in January of 2023. In July of 2023, I went back to Southern California for a book signing, and I had a speaking engagement. And I went back there, did both. And then as we were leaving, my husband was with me. I told him, I wanted to go visit dad. So we went to the cemetery, and as I was talking to him, something in my brain said, go to the school. And so I told my husband, I said, I want to go to the school. And part of it was because there's a placard. LAPD started putting placards up on the street signs where officers were killed in the line of duty. So my dad has one. It's on the front side of the school, not the back side of the school on that street. But I wanted to go to that. Now, understand, anytime I went anywhere near that school in the past, I would have full skin crawling panic attacks, just horrible. And I thought, nope, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna go see that placard. So we did. We went to the school, we found the placard. And as I was standing there on the street looking up at it taking pictures, I felt a sense of peace. There was not one molecule in my body that felt anxious. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is incredible. And then that little voice in my head said, go back to the back of the school. And I looked at my husband and I said, we have one more place to go before we leave to go to the airport. And he was like, oh, okay. And I was driving. Uh, so we got in the car. I started to drive up the front of the school to the street that connects the back to the front. And as I was turning right on that street to head towards the back, my husband looked at me and said, what are you doing? And I said, just give me a minute. And I drove and I got to the street that my dad was killed on. And I turned and I went up the street. I turned the car around and I parked. And at that point, I was able to describe to my husband in detail what I saw that night, where things were, where the ambulance was, where the police cars were, where my dad's truck was, like everything. And again, not 1 ounce of me was out of sort. Not 1 ounce of me felt anxious. I was at peace. And we looked at each other and said, oh my God, we've come full circle. So when I say you can heal from horrific things, if you do the work that needs to happen, it's not easy. I'm not going to candy coat it. It sucks. But when you do, the freedom from that pain holding over your life is priceless.
But you know, Susan, you have to want to make that happen. You
Absolutely.
can't just hope it happens or goes away. You put in the
Absolutely.
work.
Yep.
You chased it. You went after it. You put in the work,
Yep.
and unfortunately, people that you know have not put in the work and
Right.
don't want to put in the work. And
Right.
so they'll suffer with it forever. And we see
And
that
that's an
all the
unfortunate
time.
thing. Yeah, absolutely. It's unfortunate, but that's why we have free will. Um, if someone really wants to heal, they really want to heal and they have a purpose. So that's what I was saying is when I wrote the book, when fear started creeping up with me, and that's a normal human condition. Fear would creep up. I would see those faceless people out there that needed to know that they were not alone and that there was hope. And I needed to be that voice for them. And in that I was able to, and this is my tagline, bulldoze
You had to
my
wait.
fear.
I missed that. That cut out. What was your tagline?
Bulldoze your fear. I had to bulldoze my fear. of all the other things that could hold me back from continuing to write this book and publish it. So when you find a purpose, whatever that is for you, you know, it could be your children, it could be a career that you've always wanted, but whatever has gone on with you has kept you and held you back from it. The belief systems, the negative self-talk, right? All of those things come into play when you haven't healed. And when you start to do that, the opportunities for you to do whatever you put your mind to happen. And so, yes, are there people out there that are scared? I mean, it's all fear.
Yeah.
It's all fear of stepping out.
What happened? What happened? What came first, the book or the therapy? Working, doing the counseling and things like that. Which one came first? Were you doing counseling and helping people with PTSD first, and then wrote the book, or which
No,
one?
it's been kind of an evolution. So I wrote the book, and what I noticed is that when the book came out, all of a sudden it started opening up conversations with people. I have always, kind of like my dad, I always say I'm my father's daughter. I have always tried, especially in my healed state or healing state, I wouldn't say I'm totally healed. Um, but in my healing state, I always try to give people a safe space to be vulnerable because vulnerability is what pushes you forward and allows you to heal. So what I found is after the book came out, all of a sudden it was starting to open conversations for people. And they were telling me things that they don't tell just anyone, right? I'm not a therapist. I don't pretend to be one, but I am someone who has done the work and understands what it takes. And so in doing that, I realized that that is my true passion. It isn't real estate, just letting you know. I mean, we coach our clients and that's what I mean. Coaching has always followed me in my careers. So, um, and I've had my own real estate clients tell me, Susan, you should be a coach. So I'm hearing it and I've listened to it and I'm like, that's it, I'm moving forward and because I think that not only being on stages and telling my story and telling my message, um, if I can help one person in that audience, I've done my job. But also sitting down with someone one on one and being able to encourage them and move them forward and, give them that sense where I didn't have years ago of having someone that is going to come up alongside you and help and guide you in the right direction. So that's where my coaching came into play.
Well, I'll tell you what, the thing about psychiatry, psychiatrists, psychologists, things like that. Like you said, I mean, after my wife passed, I tried to go. I went to three different people, and I just felt that they were opening the book, Lost Spouse for Dummies, and let's go to chapter one, two, three, and we're like, let's just, you know what I mean? It's like cookie
Mm-hmm.
cutter stuff. I'm like, dude,
Yep.
no, no. I mean, I already know what you're gonna ask me. I mean, where you're doing this is such ridiculous. I already read the book. You're trying to read, bring to me,
Right.
right? And
Yeah.
so I don't think in any way, like there's a program that I'm involved with called the Grief Recovery Institute. And they
Mhm.
teach the grief recovery method. And, we're not licensed psychologists. We're not, we didn't go to 8 years of medical school,
Mhm.
whatever. But, it's a specific program to help people get through their grief, from start to
Absolutely.
finish. Um, so what you want to do in helping people, you don't have to be a licensed therapist. You've walked a mile in their moccasins, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you have the empathy for that, which,
Yeah.
most doctors don't have. They've learned in school what to say and what to do, but they
Right.
haven't experienced it. So you can come from a whole different area regarding that.
Well, absolutely. And even when when you're talking about professionals, and I was talking about trauma competent, um, the competency part is really important. And the reason is because all traumas are different, right? So, um, you want somebody who actually specializes in your type of trauma because they will be able to really know clinically what type of modalities are going to help you the most. Also, with modalities, not all modalities are for everyone. There's not a one size fits all, and so you've got to kind of figure out what works best for you and then use that modality, for your healing. So, that's one of the important messages that I have for people is that, your healing is your healing, it's not their healing. And in order to take responsibility for your own healing, you have to make sure that you're aligning yourself with someone who you feel like you can be vulnerable with. And that is going to be a safe space for you to continue to move forward and heal. Um, because it isn't an easy road, And I tell people it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. And the
Yeah.
same with grief. Um, the same with grief, right?
And what's
So,
interesting thing is the people who came to you and were saying the things,
uh-huh.
the five things that you hear. Oh, you're so strong. Oh, don't worry about it. You'll get over it. If you lose a pet, oh, we'll just get you another pet. You don't have to mourn that pet. We'll just get you another one. People who lost a child, it's like, oh, you could always have another child. You guys are young. I mean, people seem to, in good meaning, right? They mean well,
Mhm.
but they say the exact opposite things of what you should be saying to someone
Oh
who's
yeah,
going through that
absolutely.
particular thing, right? So when
Yep.
you've been through it like you have and you're working with people, you maybe have a different way to address their pain and to try to walk them through that marathon, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And especially, with trauma, it is a one step at a time kind of situation, and you got to give yourself grace too. Um, there were days when I wrote this book that there was no way I was showing houses. I can tell you that right now. I had nothing left, and
Yeah.
so on those days I gave myself grace and I went and I did something for myself that gave me joy because I knew the next day would be a different day. And that's just how I kind of got through it. And I tell people that are, dealing with healing or even grief the same thing. It's important to give yourself grace. And like I said, it's not a marathon. I mean, it is a marathon, it's not a
It is.
race.
So what's the next step for Susan Snow? Are we going to write another book? Are we going to open our own real estate office? Are we going to go full-time coaching? Or we're just going to jump right into the therapy? Or are you going to just keep doing all of them?
I'm actually my coaching business. I'm really looking forward to getting into that. Um, I want to get on as many stages as I can and get paid for that. I've been on many stages since 2023. Um, and it's been a blessing. I've been grateful. But my biggest goal is to be in front of 10,000 people, and I'm on my way. I know I am. Um, but yeah, I mean, I don't get me wrong, I love real estate, but it's not my thing. It's my purpose is coaching and speaking. As far
Yeah.
as a book, yes, there is another book that's in the works in my head. That will come. And my editor said something very interesting to me. She said, Susan, after my book came out, um, she said, now that it's out, you're going to be living your next book. you're living your next book. And she's absolutely right.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. I have a thing for authors. I'd love to interview authors. I've interviewed a bunch of them. I obviously love books. But they've all said the same thing. A lot of them have said in the middle of writing a book, the idea for my next book kind of popped up just from what I'm covering here. So it can feed on yourself. But what I really love what you were just saying is, so many people don't want to affirm what they want. They don't want to sound like, oh, who does she think she is? Tony Robbins or things like that. But you're like, no, look, dude, I'm gonna keep rocking the speaking gig and I'm going to speak to 10,000 people. So bite me if you don't think I am. You didn't think I was going to write a book either, right? So screw you. So it's like, you're affirming openly and passionately to the universe and to people, this is what I'm going to do. And
Hmm.
there's no shame in saying, "Hey, I love real estate. I love my clients. I love to help, homeowners.
Hmm.
I love to home sellers. It's a great life
Hmm.
and I do help people in it. However, I'm put on this planet to do this. This is what I'm here for. This is my purpose. And to keep affirming that is awesome, kiddo. Don't ever back down from what you really are
Thank
supposed to be
you.
doing.
It's taken me a long time to get here.
A shitload of time.
A long time. But life is short. And I feel like my purpose is bigger than myself and that I am just a vessel for this message. And I just continue to think that way is that um, I was given this and I am going to, I always feel like my dad is, I mean, when I was writing the book, my dad was like kicking me in the rear to get it, to keep getting it done, right? Because he knows that this is beyond me. Um, and that uh there is the message is important and people need to hear it.
We don't always know at the time why a tragedy or why an event happened. Like,
Mhm.
you could be driving behind someone and they run the red light and they just get completely creamed and it changes their whole life. And you're like, that could have been me. I mean, another 2 seconds and I might have been the one to follow them through that light and I might have gotten hit. You
Right,
never know why certain things happen that lead you in a direction. You don't
right.
know. But Sujit, you've been so awesome. You've been so open, so giving. I'm grateful for your time, but I have one last question.
Sure.
I always ask everybody, I sneak it on them at the end because I'm mean like that. But, you know, it doesn't have to be about your book or your history or your life, but it seems like everyone I've talked to has a something, a feeling, a saying that sticks with them, a thought that sticks with them. So if there was something that Susan Snow wanted to leave with our audience that meant something to you that you would like to share and leave us with, what would that thought be?
Oh my gosh, I think about this all the time actually. um I think the biggest thing is no matter what you're going through, you're not alone. I think everybody at some point, whether it's loss, whether it's a trauma, whatever it is, that they feel like they're alone. And I think the biggest thought that I have is that I want to make sure that everybody understands that they're not alone.
That's awesome. Because it's super, 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 super lonely when something like that happens. When you lose somebody, you know,
Yep.
you're all by yourself in it, no matter how many attaboys you get or how many people initially call you, and then life goes on. You lose your wife, you get all these casseroles delivered in the first week, but then everyone goes on with their life, and you're just kind of
Yeah.
sitting there going, shit, I'm
Well,
all
and I think
alone.
part of that is here's my other side of that is that your relationship with your loved one is different than the relationship that they had with that person. So no matter what anybody says or feels, they will never know what it feels for you because you had a different connection to that person. So I never say, oh, I know what you're feeling because I don't. I don't know what it feels like. Like, I would never even say that to my own mother. Like, oh, I know how you feel because I don't.
Right.
She
Or your
lost
brother. I mean, your
her
brother, you
sibling.
don't know what your brother
Yes,
felt at 6. It's impossible to know.
right.
But how is your brother? I mean, did he
He,
heal through this? I mean, how is your brother?
oh, he's on his healing journey now. Um, he's been in and out of therapy his whole life. My brother, I always laugh. I call him my Hercules. The man has been through a lot in his life, a lot. And my dad was just the beginning. Um, and I call him Hercules because he's still here on Earth. But he's also like 6'2" and almost 300 pounds.
So he's a badass. What did he
He's
think of
a
your what did
big
he think of your
boy.
what did he think of your book?
Oh, he's so proud of me.
That's
And you know, we didn't speak for many, many years. Um, he made some choices that I didn't agree with, a lot of self-sabotage. Same with my mom. You know, they both dealt with addiction. Um, and I had to distance myself from it. And then he had shame, um, survivor's guilt, you name it. So he was okay with the distancing, um, although it was very lonely for him. And we started healing our relationship about 7 years ago. Um, and we're close now, a lot closer than we were. He has not read the book, and I'm okay with that just because he has a lot of the different things will trigger him. I hate that word trigger, but they will. And he has visceral reactions to it. So I'm totally okay with him not reading the book. His wife read it and we had conversations around it. Um, and I told him, you know, if you want to read it one day, you know, let your therapist walk you through that. That's great. If you don't, that's fine too. I did write it. Part of the reason I wrote it is because I wanted to not only heal the strangers, but I wanted to try to heal my own family and my Leo family, you know, law enforcement still has a lot of pain and anger around my dad's death, and it's been 39 years. So when I wrote it, I just thought, you know, maybe it will, if they see how I have come out of this, then it'll give them hope and healing. And um, and so that was a priority for me in writing it.
Well, you done good, kiddo.
Thank
And
you.
man, I'll tell you what, it's not easy. And I know
Mm-mm.
so many people don't do what you're doing and trying to do and have done. Not only faced your own demons and your own PTSD, but moving forward to help others, and then to expose yourself to be that vulnerable to actually write a book. I'm excited about your speaking. I'm going to
Thank
be
you.
number 9,998 in the crowd when you speak to 10,000. If I got to go freaking outside and drag in 3 more people, I'm going, look, here's a free ticket. All right. You're going to be happy you're here. We need 10,000. All right. I will be
Thank you.
there, whether it's at the where the Avalanche play or whatever, where the Nuggets
Yep.
play. So you've been awesome.
Thank you.
Everybody, today we've been able to chat with Susan Snow. Went deep, shared so much. We got to get her book. Please tell us the name of your book.
It's The Other Side of the Gun, My Journey from Trauma to Resiliency. It is on Amazon and it is a paperback version or Kindle version. If you're on Kindle Unlimited, you can actually read my book for free. And all I ask is for a review.
Yay. Hey, real quick, and then I'll let you go because you've been so kind with your time. Who's gonna play your dad in the movie?
Oh my God. So there already was a movie.
Really?
Didn't
No
even get to
shit.
that. Yeah. Yeah.
No way.
Yeah. There was a movie made in 1994. We filmed it in 93. It came out in 94. It was called The Price of Vengeance. It was one of the In the Line of Duty series that would be made for TV movies.
Wow.
And Michael Gross played my dad.
Who?
Michael Gross.
Oh yeah, no shit. Oh
Yeah.
wow. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Was your dad
He,
actually that good looking?
yeah. My dad was a nice looking man. Yes.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Well, you've been great. You've been so awesome. I love finishing that way because that's super cool. I'll have to look up that series and see that. But you've been wonderful. I can't wait to continue to see your success, your
Thank you.
coaching, your speaking, the real estate, whatever. But I really, really enjoyed this, and I am so grateful for your time, kid. I really am.
Thank you so much for having me.
All
Appreciate
right.
it.
Thanks, guys. That's another episode of What If You Could. And we've got a What If You Could Hall of Famer next to us. And we'll see you guys next time. Thank you. That was that. That went fast.
Yeah, it did.
How was that? Okay. You all
It
right with
was
that?
good. Yeah.
Cool.
Felt authentic. It felt good. I thought it was great.
It was awesome. Yeah, it was awesome. So yeah, that's cool that they actually did a movie on it. I mean, it's
Hmm.
not cool because of why, but I mean
Right.
that's bizarre that they already did a movie on that and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I because of my cancer, I had radiation and chemo, so my brain doesn't hold stuff like it used to. So I love to read. So I thought, well, maybe I'll try audiobooks, right? Because maybe it'll help me. But I can't stand an audiobook. I need to hold. So is yours on an audiobook?
Not yet.
Not yet.
I've got to
Okay.
get into that's one of my goals for 2025. I'm going to get into a studio and do my own book.
Good. Good. Because that's what I was going to ask you if you hadn't yet is I can't tell you how crucial it is the person reading the book. I mean, the
Yep.
person actually doing it can make or break the book, and it really
Yep.
can because I've tried to do some audible books, and I'm like, I can't stand this person's the way they're doing it.
Voice.
Because the
Yeah.
whole thing about the book is be able to visualize, right?
Right.
And so then you read the book, you go, oh man, this is so good. So
Hmm.
yeah, that you're gonna do it is pretty awesome because I think it has to be your authentic voice
Yep.
and not someone who's a professional and they just don't get your
Yeah.
personality
Well,
and who you are.
initially I said I was going to hire an actor, and I had several people come to me and be like, "Oh, hell no. You're going to do this.
Yeah,
You've got a voice for it. You're going to do this. Like, you're going to do it." I was like, "Okay." So, yeah, I got to get into a studio in order to do it, but yeah, I will get the audiobook done for sure.
that's awesome. Because honestly, you're it's gonna come out of you and it's gonna come from
Mhm.
your thought. Anyone, no one else will be able to do it like you could do. So I'm
Thanks.
excited for you doing that. So now I got
Thanks.
to get the audio book. Thanks again for joining us on another episode of What If You Could podcast. Please subscribe, like, share, and give us any feedback. We'd love to hear it. And remember, if you can dream it, you can do it. See you next time.